All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Coffee and Craps. Y'all have your popcorn ready? You ready for the big show? I teased that a little bit yesterday, and of course, I made today's show the anti-trend show. But honestly, I want to have a real conversation about this. And I'm going to start today by rolling 36 dice, and only because I want to not prove a point, but I want to have one data point to talk about. So bear with me here while I roll the dice 36 times. I've got 6 stacks of 5. I can't count. There's 30, 5, 36. I'm just going to mark the numbers as I roll them. We'll leave Chiro here. Maybe because he's here, we'll have more yos. And I will also, by the way, mark the number of times we set and don't set a point. It's not going to matter that much because you can't really gain a lot from that in 36 rolls. But let us get some numbers out here and see the number of times we roll things. There's a 4. Again, let's mark them up, and we'll call it out. If we see a variant or a trend, we'll start calling out. There's an 8. I guess I'll put them in the middle. It doesn't really matter where they go, but let's see if we can, I want to see at what point we break expectations, okay? And I'll give you some better definitions here in a minute, but the definition of variant is where you stray from the expected numbers. Okay, there's a 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's put that over here. Actually, I'll put it right here in the middle. That's a better place for it. There's a 5. Boy, so far, everything is just on point, right? We are completely just one of everything so far, right? We haven't seen any repeaters yet. There's a 6, 1, 7. So again, I'm tracking my 7s as they're different types here too. So you can see that I expect a couple of each, not just 6 total, right? Combinations kind of matter. There's our second ace deuce. So that one there is potentially going to become out of sorts at some point. It's the first one that we've seen that might have something weird happen to it. There's a 6, a second one, 5, 1, 6. I'm not going to match all the combinations of these things. We're going to count totals for them, but the 7s are interesting to talk about. There's our second yo. No, our first yo. 6, 5. That's over there. Maybe for the first time in history, we'll have an exact 36, right? The perfect 36. Wouldn't it be cool if we could do that? There's a midnight. Wow. Okay. Often when I do this, I don't get one of the horn numbers. So we've got them all except for 1 so far, which is interesting. There's the 4. Okay. It's like watching paint dry, isn't it? Watching somebody roll 36 rolls and not caring about it. There's our third 4. And actually, we've gotten 1 hard way and two easies on the 4, which is kind of cool. There's another 5, 2. It's our second 5, 2, 7. And there's a 10. Is that our second 10? But the 4 and 10, right? What does Waylon say? Randy and the 4s and 10s, right? That could be the name of a band, actually. A little rock band. Randy and the 4s and 10s. There's our first 9. That's our first. That's all the horn numbers. All the horn numbers rolled. Those 2 are perfect. The ace deuce is perfect. We just need one more yo. And the horn would actually be like done. And the 10, same thing. Look at that. 2 hard ways, 1 easy way on the 10. Perfection. God, am I going to like make history here by rolling the first perfect 36 ever? 3 8s. How cool would that be? There's a 6, 3, 9. This will be great. We haven't seen any kind of a trend or a variant yet as we're doing this, right? There's our yo. There's our second yo. So the horn actually, perfection. That's pretty awesome. There's a 6, 2, 8. Again, there's our fourth 8. So the 8 is basically one roll away from being where it's supposed to be. Something has to break free here at some point. There's the 8. So the 4 is done, the 8's done, the 10 is done, the horn is done, the 7s are behind, right? Is that a trend yet? Is it a variant? Not necessarily. There's our first variant. There it is. So our first, now we are definitely in a variant because we have an extra, I'll put the variant stuff behind. We have an extra 4. That's the first thing. We are in now finally a variant where we know that one number has overachieved. One thing has, so it has to come from somewhere. Something else is going to be light 1. But this is what the definition in person of a variant is. There's a second or third ace deuce. Now we're 2. We are 2. I'll put them like this. I'll put it like here. I'll kind of lean it back so you know. Okay, we have 2 numbers now that are in variance with the expectation. Notice how I use the word there, 4, 3, 7, which means that's gonna steal a number from somewhere else. Okay, third ace deuce. Our third ace deuce. That's gonna be, look at that. There's 2 of those back there. That's a hot number right there. Hot number, there's an 8. That's our 6th 8. So I'll put these like that. And I'll put the extra 8 behind it so you can see. We're in. Oh my God, look at that. Look at that. Are we trending? Are we trending on the ace deuce, or am I just throwing randoming and ending up in a cluster that appears to be a pattern? And I think that's probably the answer. There's a 4, 3, 7. The 7s are actually going to be probably not where we're going to lose it. We're going to lose it on the 5 and 9. It looks like they're going to be the ones that are short. 4, 3, 7. There's our 6th 7, but our 3rd of one variety of it. Not that that really matters, but it's a thing. 6, 3, 9. So the 7s are actually correct. There's 2 rows left. We got another ace deuce. Boy, oh boy, is that number trending or is that number trending? We got 6 ace deuces in this 36 rolls. That's absolute insanity. And there's the 9. So here's our numbers. We have exactly the right number of 9s, the exact right number of 10s, right? An extra 8, an extra 4, a bunch of extra ace deuces. The 6s are actually correct. The 6 and the 5 were way down. When you have a variant like this, when you're in a variant like this, or there is some measure of variance, this is what happens. There's more of a couple things, right? Way more of that, and less of other things. It steals from. You're still within the 36 roll boundary, but you're going to have movement within the boundary, okay? Did anything I do there intimate a trend to you? Or are we just having a weird cluster of stuff happen, right? That's going to be our question for today. So we're going to go ahead and go back here. Let's see, let me get back over here and say an official hello. Let me turn the light off back there. And welcome to the show. Now, I know that was kind of boring to watch me roll 36 rolls, but I think it's important to have the rolls back there as we're talking about our conversation here today. Hope that makes sense to you, okay? Randy don't play when it comes to fours. Yeah, exactly right, Waylon. Randy does not play around, which surprised me, actually. You put a video out yesterday where the primary piece of it was a lay 4, right? You're doing the pass line thing and a lay 4, and I'm like, man, Waylon always talk about how Randy throws them 4s, and he's got the strategy where you're laying the 4. I was kind of surprised, but when they're lagging behind, and they can lag behind sometimes, like the 6 and 5 lag behind right here. If you're in if you're in that kind of a variant, then you're going to be in just great shape. So, all right, there it is. Yeah, and I think we're going to talk about this exact point, right? What's important is not the variance itself, the timing of events in the variance. And I'll give you an example of this, right? What if, and we'll come back to it later on, but what if you rolled, let's say that what was it, the 4? Okay, the 4 is the variant, right? The 4, we know we had 4 of those instead of 3, which, by the way, is the repeater, if you're betting that thing. And it would have flipped. Well, I guess it wouldn't have flipped because of the 7s. But anyway, if you rolled those four 4s on the first 4 rolls, picture that. That's the same outcome, the same 36 rolls, the same 4 4s, but they came in the first 4 rolls. 4, 4, 4, 4. Boom. That's, your eyes are going to say that's a trend, right? You're going to assign pattern to it, and you're going to think that that's the thing you should bet on. As a random roller like that, right? That's the thing. Or the better example, I guess, is the 9. The 9 was perfect. The 9 had exactly 4 rolls. You rolled the 4 9s in the first 4 rolls and never rolled another 9. Were you in a variant or not? No. Were you in a trend? No. You just clustered them together, right? There's all these words that kind of matter. So we're going to get into that all here in a little bit, but let's get into the other stuff before we jump into the fun stuff. Okay, I want to make sure that was just kind of a precursor there. And I know y'all like shut up and get talking. Let's do it. Real quick recap of yesterday. Where are we? We are here. I want to make sure I'm on the right screen. There it is. Okay, so yesterday in the 6, 7, 8 in the garage, if you didn't watch the show, don't. It wasn't good. I started out with 5 minutes of no volume because I'm a dumbass, and then I proceeded to destroy myself. I played Wager 6, 7, 8 with one mistake. I did talk to Wager after the show, and I played it where my don't was 125, which was the right amount, but I also played about 125 in bets. He wanted me to play about 100 in bets. So every bet, including the 7, wins the same amount, about 25, 30 bucks. I'll play it again today with that one change to it. I will play the across bets a little different. I'll play them more the way that I like to play them. style-wise, but it's still gonna be the same ratio, and that's gonna be the thing there. But boy, oh boy, did I snipe myself yesterday. Everything was wrong. Like I hit great numbers, right? I set an 8, beautiful, right? Hit the 8, snipe the don't. Okay, let's come back out with a 4 or whatever. Great, and I set a point of 4, go across like you're supposed to with all the odds, right? I'd either hit a 4 immediately, losing my odds, or I would 7 out immediately, meaning I made $10. And I was like in this shitty world where I'd hit the 7s, but before I got any hits, and I'm like, man, I just could not get out of my own way. And we just dissolved that bankroll from 1,200 down to 100, earned it back to about 900 bucks, I think, and we ended up like 825. So it is what it is. We lost yesterday. I sniped the crap out of it. Can I beat it? Yes. I know that there's this consternation about that show, the Daily Paycheck show. Some people want it to be a strategy test. Some people want it to be John building a bankroll, right? I'm trying to do both at the same time, and I think that it's kind of an opposing force thing, right? I'm using strategy testing as a way to build the bankroll to show you that this strategy can or can't be the way to build a bankroll. There's a reasoning behind it, but it can be kind of boring. So there it is. Yesterday was not my best effort, but hopefully we'll catch it today. The nice thing about the 6, 7, 8 is that you have some potential in that one. When I'm playing only dark, you kind of irk your way up and get your paycheck and you're done. With this one, if the roll stays consistently hot, you can just keep on banking money, right? So you can recover those losses with a good run. I think this one has more potential for us. So we'll see. We'll see if that works. All right. Our next thing then is to remind you a couple things. Friday Night Fights, which is in a couple of days now. Craig and Corey, we know they're both in. I don't got to call anybody. They're both chomping at the bit to play. I'll deal it here. We'll use the bubble craps thing. It'll be fun. And again, we mentioned that all the Chiros are showing up. Boy, the 11s are hot everywhere. Buckeye Slim, the 300 Plus Club, announced in chat today that he's going to dedicate his show tonight to Chiro. I'm going to reach out to Crystal today. It's been a few days now, so I was trying to stay out of her hair a little bit and just check in on them and see how they're doing. I'm sure it's not good, but I wanted to call today and maybe tomorrow have a little update for you with how the family's holding up. But everybody here, I'm getting lots of emails, lots of how do I get in touch? How do I send money? What do I do? And I'm going to let her drive some of that. So now it's time that she can be the driver of what happens. So I'll let you know as we hear. But yeah, Chiro, hasn't left our hearts for sure. He's still everywhere, everywhere in these chats and in our dice and everything else. So, okay. The next thing on the announcement scale is the Seattle meetup. Don't forget the meetup. If you're coming, and I'm talking to you, Corey, you're coming. Couple things, right? Corey, who is Sith Lord Espy, was lamenting the fact yesterday that hotels are really expensive out here. I didn't realize that the casino hotel was super expensive. So Ian, I told him last night, we got to fix this. He's making some phone calls, but in the meantime, there are hotels near my house that are about $130 a night. The hotel at the casino is like $300, I think, and the McMenamins is like $250. It's a lot. For sure. I don't expect you to come out here and pay $600 just to sleep. That's a little insane. Corey's looking for an Airbnb, like that can sleep 8 or 9 people. So if you want to do that, if you go to Discord in the Seattle Meetup channel, Corey's in there talking about potentially getting an Airbnb with a bunch of you. So if y'all want to do that, get together and figure that out. Okay, get together and figure out between you all how you're going to do it. Like I said, the Seattle casinos aren't close, right? My local is about 35 minutes north. The other one's about 35 minutes south. I live right in the middle of that. We're going to probably stay around here and, do our thing from here. You can come to my house. We can spread out, that kind of thing. So we will, we'll make it work, but you got to sign up. You got to go to crapsforthecure.com and register, get signed in, pay your $25 or $50 if you're going to go to the game. We'll order you a hat like we're going to do, and that lets me get a count. The casinos want to know how many guys are coming. We told them 20, 25, but I've got 2 people registered, Jen and Jen's wife, me and Ian. That's 4 total. Corey has said he's coming, but hasn't registered yet. If you're coming, please register so I can get a good count. We need a good count to let them know. And if we can, guarantee 20 people, we get the private table. If we guarantee 4 people, we don't get a private table, right? That's kind of what this comes down to. So let's Let's push it. Ian, I see you in chat. Come on, people, sign up. Jen's going to say, come on, people, sign up. Duracell, you can spoon with anybody you want to. You come on out here, okay? Let's going to have fun, okay? Be a fun couple of days. We're going to play in my house. You get to, maybe I'll put you to work, help me clean the garage out. The table half of the garage is spotless. The half of the garage where everything that used to be on that half is a disaster. So I may get y'all to do a dump run. Oh, Thomas, your donation for the veteran. What did I miss something? Ooh. Wow, I totally missed that. Thank you. By the way, you can always go to crapsforthecure.com and that money goes right to them. This is so appreciated. I'll make sure what I'll do is I'll pull this and I'll put it right to vets for you. Now, we got to talk about this because this is important before I talk about the other stuff. I got a phone call yesterday, finally, from Veterans Moving Forward, which is the organization that we're raising funds for. Veterans Moving Forward. They're the ones that raise the animals. We finally got our lock in. So I talked to them yesterday. Their COO yesterday. Here's the deal with them. They are a small group. It's like 4 or 5 people. They raise dogs from pups. They actually breed the pups from lines that are known to have good history with trainability, empathy, and that kind of thing. So they're hand-selected puppies. It takes them 2 years to raise the pup, to train it to be ready to handle somebody with PTSD. It takes 2 years. 2 years it takes to train that puppy. Then when a vet is selected, and the pups, they find they have kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? They have like kind of like a bent towards something. Like some of them are better at certain types of things. They match the pup with a vet. Then it's another year of the vet and the pup working together with the company, right, with the organization, and the pup working by itself to deal with, like, let's say a vet's trigger, whatever the trigger is. If it's a loud noise, the pup knows the trigger. And also the pup gets to know what the vet's doing. So let's say that a vet, I'll give you an example. Let's say that when something's loud, like 4th of July might be a case, right? The vet might have their leg, like you can't see, but their leg might shake. Pups can recognize that. They can feel the temperature drop in the room and they can see the leg shake, and the pup's trained to walk over there, put their head on the leg, lean into it a little bit, and then the vet starts petting the dog, right? That's kind of how this works. It takes 3 years to get that right. Can you believe that? I had no idea that it took that long. And it takes about $50,000 to raise the pup for the 3 years and finally release it into the home of a veteran who's dealing with PTSD. 3 years, $50K. So now you know my goal, right? This organization, fan-freaking-tastic. They're just like a small group. They're all in. Trust me, every dollar you donate to them is going right into a dog. Like it's going to buy food. It's going to pay for the trainer. It's going right there. They just dump it all in, you know? Now you know the goal. Last year we raised 16K. My goal this year was 25. That'll do half of a dog or half of a dog's training. Boy, wouldn't it be great if we could crack 50 this year and actually pay for one full animal? That would be unbelievable. So now you know the thing, right? My first phone call yesterday. Now you know this. Everybody knows this, and we're going to jump into the good stuff here in a minute. But you know that yesterday, Ed and a couple others didn't like what I had to say about the whole trending thing, right? And they were a little upset and blah blah blah. And they put videos out to give me some grief, and that's fine. My first phone call was to Ed. You have to know this. Ed and I love Ed. I think Ed and I think we're pretty good friends. My first phone call was to Ed. My first email was to Adam G. Adam G in chat, who you might also know as New York Steak or New York Strip in Discord. Adam's the one who introduced me to the organization. So that relationship got started with Adam. We know that Ed's son deals with PTSD from being in the military. And so I know this is close to Ed's heart. So my first phone call yesterday, after all the mess of this show with the trending shit, was Ed. And I wanted him to know, dude, like we got the deal. Like they are all in. They're going to interview with us. They're going to give us promotional spots. They're going to do all they can to help us out. You have to know that. Like that's, you know, I know that we give each other grief on these shows and all that sometimes, and a lot of sniping back and forth. Everybody behind the scenes, we're like this. We are all really good friends. So I want you to know that. And I was pretty happy about it. It was pretty cool. And he announced it last night, and I wanted to give you some more details on it today. The organization is every bit as awesome as we hoped they would be, and they are all in on what we're doing here. So there it is. That's the big announce today. The other big announce that's coming at some point today, I'm sure, and I'll do the little boost here if I can. Okay, Alfredo, our friend Alfredo is about 985, whatever. He's like 15 away from 1,000 subscribers. He's pushing really, really hard to get that 1,000. If you're not subscribed to Alfredo, go to Alfredo's channel, please, and subscribe. Maybe that will kind of end some of the we're almost there talk, right? It's like, just get it done. Let's get into 1,000, right? He's got plans and goals to that number is meaningful to him. Let's get it done. Let's go get Alfredo's 1,000 and we'll go back to normalcy here, right? And that's what I'm hoping for. All right, now abnormalcy. Let's get into the fight, shall we? Yesterday, on yesterday's show, I was talking about variance and trends, and we had a huge audience. We had a big group of people here, 80 people here watching the show yesterday, and I pissed everybody off. Now, people did not like what I had to say about variance and trends, and I think there's a number of reasons for that, and some of them don't sit well with me, right? One would be you think I was wrong, and if you think I was wrong yesterday, you're the one that's wrong. Mathematically speaking, what I said yesterday is perfectly true, absolutely valid. You may not like it, but doesn't make it wrong. Some people didn't like my conclusions that I drew. I think some people didn't also watch the whole thing. So we're going to redo some of that lecture today. So you watch the whole thing. Stay to the end, because there's going to be interesting things here said at the end, especially about influence when it comes to that, okay? I also fear, though, that some people didn't understand what I said. And it doesn't sit well with me, because that means I didn't explain it well. And as an instructor, you know, I feel like if I don't explain it well, therefore it won't sit well, and therefore it doesn't get consumed correctly, right? So I want to take a shot today at redoing some of the speech from yesterday and reframing things in a way that I think is going to make sense. Now, here's the first things I want to say. We got to get some kind of ground level set here. Okay, here's the ground level. Okay, one, when things are perfect, if you had a perfect 36 rolls there, right? Which again, you can never do. But if I had a perfect 36 rolls, the casino wins. That's house edge. House edge is based on them taking a little bit of a spiff off of every single bet. If it's a perfect distribution, they win. Okay. If the variant is negative for you, let's say that there was one extra 7 instead of one extra 4 today, they win, right? That the 1, 2, 3s, we had what, 4? We had 5 ace deuces today. Okay. I would call that a negative variant, because those are in 36 rolls bets you're probably not getting paid on. There's a few people that bet the field. Some people are going to hammer the horn, right? Most of us are up in the box, not getting paid. That's a negative variant, and the casino wins on that, right? When it's even, they win. When it's bad for you, of course they win, right? The only way, the best way, the given way to win in gambling is to exploit the positive variance, right? If that 4 happened to roll 4 times in a row, right? If you catch, 5 6s before a 7, right? When the variant is in your favor, that's when you win money. That's when you win money. So that's why this is an important talk. It's not about who's right, who's wrong, and all that stuff. The important thing I think to hear for us to understand is that you always are in a variant. 100% of the time you're in a variant. You're never in perfect 36, but you're always in a variant. If you can exploit the variant when it's positive for you, or duck a little bit when it's negative for you, and wait for the variant to become positive and then be able to hammer it, that's a betting style thing that we can talk about later on. Not today, but we'll talk about that later. That's how you win at this game. And that's the purpose of the talk here. Hope that makes sense, right? Our assumption today has got to be this. And look at what's in bold here. Every roll is unique. Every roll is random. We will address dice influence at the end of the segment. So stick around to the end. We will talk about dice control, dice influence, and all of that as it relates to all this. But for the purposes of our discussion here, every roll has to be seen as unique, meaning there's no memory. There is history, but the dice don't know the history, right? Every roll is a random outcome. And when you're dealing with randomness, the terms variance and trends take on different meanings than if you don't consider randomness. And I think that's an important thing that we have to all consider. Okay, let's move ahead and define a couple of things, all right? Variance is an exact measurement, right? It's the difference between the actual that I just rolled, my 36 I just rolled, and what we expected to see. Variance is a number. 1% variance, 2% variance, -1%, whatever the percentage of variance is, you apply that to the expected values, and then you get a result, okay? Mathematically, you can say, let's pretend you have this SRR of 6.5, right? You're 0.5% or you're 6.6. 6.6 SRR, you're 1% over expected, okay? Let's say that's where you are, okay? What does that mean? You can apply that number, that percentage of variance that you've created with your throw to the 36-roll distribution chart and come up with what you're likely to see. That's the purpose of variance. It is the calculation. It is the measurement of the difference between actual reality and expectations, okay? And again, if you have an SRR up or down, you can apply that exact percentage to a formula that's actually a pretty long, complicated formula to figure out what the variance is, what you can expect, okay? A variant, the noun, is a way to describe something that is different from what we expect in the moment. Right there, we were rolling in a variant. We didn't know what the variance was, right? I'm random. There's no variance to random, right? There might be a variance if you have control. You can say, I have a 2% or 1% or X% variance in my toss. Random cannot say that, right? We were in a variant. We had no idea what the variant was. It's a way to describe what we saw, okay? And again, you're always in a variant. A trend, here's the kicker word, right? A trend is a pattern of data that changes systemically or systematically, however you want to say that, right? Via some mechanism. I looked up the words yesterday on 6 different dictionaries. I went to ChatGPT to get some help. ChatGPT is getting smarter by the day, by the way. Everything says what I said yesterday. There's a mechanism behind. That was the word that they all use, mechanism. There's a mechanism. I said there's energy behind it, right? There are market forces at play that change your housing forecasts, right? There are climate forces at play that create weather patterns. Those are trends, right? There's a force behind it. There's some mechanism behind it that creates a trend. The purpose of understanding trends is so you can predict outcomes, right? Trends lead to predictability. I said this yesterday. If you literally think you can trend bet, if you think you can predict the future based on what you're seeing right here in a random game, you should not be watching me. You should be at the casino right now making all the money, right? It can't be done. It can't be done in a random game. And again, that's what I'm trying to say earlier. It's a random game. You cannot predict in a random game. Trending, to me, leads to your ability to think you can predict the outcome based on what you just saw. It's an if this, then that. Or because of this, then that. Because I saw 4 4s, the 4 is coming. Because I saw 2 7s in a row, there's no way it's coming again. That's fallacy born of what you think is a trend or a pattern. Humans have a really good way of finding patterns where there are none because it's the way that our brains can explain the unexplainable. How else can you explain 5 7s in a row? It's trending. How else can you explain when Greg threw 10 10s in a row? It's trending 10s. No, it's a cluster. It's a random cluster. Shit just happens sometimes. Trends have a mechanism. Random, there's no mechanism there. The back wall diamonds, remove the mechanism. That's just fact. I can't change the fact. You may not love the facts, but I can't change the facts as well they are. Now, I want to make sure we level set with those definitions because as we talk about it, this is an important thing, right? A trend, diving deeper, refers to a pattern or direction in data that emerges due to some underlying relationship or mechanism, okay? We care about that because trends do allow us to predict future events, okay? In the case of rolling dice, though, every roll is independent. They're all random, and they're unrelated to the previous rolls. There cannot be a mechanism at all. There's no mechanism in random rolling. That's just the case. That's the facts of it. Now, again, we'll talk more about influence here. Somebody's texting me here. We'll talk more about influence here in a little bit. Hold on one sec. I got to turn this Where's my mouse? Somebody's texting and it's making my thing ding. So focus for an hour. Focus mode for 1 hour. Okay, there we go. All right, sorry about that. That's just the facts of the matter. I can't change that. Again, influence might be a difference maker. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's my view on trending is that trending. The whole point of trending is to predict the future, and none of us can do that. None of us are good enough to do that. Now, a variant, okay, is a way to describe how the current state is different from what we expect. Like I said before, right? We're always in a variant. You're never not in a variant. Like 1 in a million, you're going to roll perfect 36. I actually was shocked by that. JB told me that, the math guy. I said, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, you'll almost never be able to roll a perfect 36. It's almost impossible to do that. 1 in 100,000 or something like that was what he said. There's a formula that he's got for it. You're always going to be in a variant, right? The thing is, trenders think they can predict the variant, or they can bet based on the variant that they're in, right? It's impossible. Streaks or clusters, they will occur in random events. They cause variance. That's what causes variance. It's some weird streak or cluster. That's that weird set of 1, 2, 3s that we just had, right? That caused some goofy variance for us, right? It is what it is. In the middle of it, you can recognize, say, oh my God, we're in a variant here, right? As soon as I rolled the 4th 4, I said, now we're in a variant. We were perfect 36 until the 4th 4 came. And I said, now we're in a variant. That was the trigger that said you're in a variant. Now, what's the variant going to be? No way to know. We're random, okay? It's just chance. It's not a pattern. The 3s were not a pattern, just happened. I think it's an important thing. I'm going to go ahead and actually change my my filter to try and watch some of the PC comments that are coming into me. Okay, so there's my definitional talk about variance and trends. I think it's very important to see that. Okay, answer El Toro's question, Jeff. So what is El Toro's question? I can't see it. El Toro says, are you calling? People can call it that. The measure, it's the difference from the mean is how they describe variance. So whatever the calculation is, and there's a calculation during and a calculation after. And I'm not a mathematician, so I can't really speak to the exact way that thing works. It's like I'll show it to you if you want to see. It's like a 6-line formula they use to detect variance, but it's always starting with some deviational number. So let's say that your SRR is 6.5 or 6.6 is easy. It's 10%, right? If you're or whatever percent is. If you're at 6.6, you know what your difference is. You apply that as the root of the formula, and that says from this point forward, here's the variance that I expect. Okay, and that only is going to apply to the 7, right? If your SRR is 6.6 or 7 or whatever the number is, right? You can say, well, that's going to affect the 7 in some way, right? You can lay out an expected 36 rolls based on fewer 7s. You cannot predict how many 4s, 5s, or 9s you're going to get, right? Unless you're counting faces variance too. You can look at the variance in each face of each die on every single roll, right? And say the left die should have this many 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s, and the right die should have this many. The combination should be that many. Therefore, when I rolled, in our case, 3, 4, 3 7s, we know that we've eliminated 2 of those faces out of the mix. That can change the possibilities. By rolling an extra 4, 3, that takes one of the 4s out of the mix because the 4 is present. Does that make sense? That's kind of how that works through. Hope that clarifies that. Again, I'm not a mathematician. Some people are. I just know how the calculation applies to us. And again, it applies in the moment. But in the moment, on roll 15 here, there was no way to know what was coming. Even though we already knew we were past the 4s and we were past the 3s, there's still no way to predict what's happening because it's a random occurrence, and that's it. Okay. Yeah, a trend is not in the moment. A trend is really, again, you look at like past events and they are the predictor of the future, right? Past events, like I said, I always use housing because housing is a good example because there's a lot of forces at play behind. There's the mechanism that pushes the prices up and down. You can look at all of that, and you can look at April every year, or where we get. We're in August of every year, with these percentage rates, with this average income, with this blah, 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 this unemployment rate, all those factors combined, you can predict my house is worth X, or my house will sell in X days. You can predict that stuff. With random dice, there's nothing you can do. There's no prediction possible in our world. And that's an important thing to know. Variance with a C, variance and variant, a variant, 2 different things. One is the calculation and the result and the measurement. One is what you're seeing in front of you. A trend, again, relies on historical data to predict future events, and we're not able to do that. And I think that's an important thing. So here's a couple of examples, and I will give you these. Just consider these. Okay, you roll 22 straight box numbers. Okay, let's take a 30. Let's take me right here, 36. I wish I would have done it today, right? If you're betting across, how many combinations are there, folks? There's 24 combinations, right? 24 combinations. So when you see the 25th box number, you're now in a variant, okay? But if you roll 22 consecutive box numbers, right? Like some dice controllers are probably able to do, right? The probability of the 23rd box number is what? It's still 3-2. It doesn't change. That does not change. You're still 24 to 36, or I'm sorry, it's 4 to 5, whatever it is. It doesn't change. It's 4 to 6. It doesn't change, right? The probability of the next roll being a box number doesn't change. Because you rolled 22 in a row, you might think you're more likely to roll a 23rd, right? Your skills may tell you that you're able to roll a 23rd. The reality of it is it doesn't change. You still have the same probability of rolling another box number, right? Are you in a trend? No, you're not in a trend. You cannot predict the next box number, the next roll being a box number, because you rolled 22 straight. Now, you could say, I would say you're in a cluster. I would say you're in a streak. I would say you're in a hot streak. I would say all the words that you want to use to describe yourself. I would not say you're trending, right? If you're a controlled shooter, I would say, good for you, you're doing your job. Your practice is coming. Your practice has manifested itself on this table. You might be the mechanism behind a trend. If it's a random shooter, the answer to that is hell no. Okay. Are you in a variant? No. 22 straight box numbers, my friends, is not a variant. Not until the 25th. The 25th box number puts you in a variant. 22 straight box numbers, unless they're all 8s or something like that, you're not in a variant yet. That's expected. I expect you to roll 24 out of 36. I expect that. We're not even there yet. So remember, as good as that is, you're still not in a variant unless you're spreading the numbers into one number, right? That's an important piece. Another good example here would be this. What if you shot 6 6s in a row? Okay, let's use that example first. Probability of the next 6, 5 out of 36. There's no change to that, right? There's no difference. The next roll, 5 out of 36 chance to be a 6. Okay. Again, if you're an influence shooter, we can have a conversation about that. Okay. But if regular happenstance, you're no different. Doesn't matter that I rolled 5. Am I in a trend? No, because what I just did, what I'm doing, the market forces at play do not predict that I'm going to roll another 6. Even a controlled shooter would never say they could roll another 6, right? They're likelier to because of their set and their throw, but they're not going to roll another 6, right? Are you in a variant? Yes. Once you see the 5th 6 or the 6th 6, you're in a variant. You're expected to roll 5. You see the 6th one, now you're in a variant. You've created some variance. Okay. If you do 35 of them, I'd say the same thing. The same probability exists for the next one to show, right? You're not in a trend because, again, unless you've got a magnet in the dice, there's no mechanism behind another 6 coming. But you're certainly in a huge variant right there. That's a big variant, right? And again, if you're betting the variant correctly, you're going to make a shit ton of money there. And that's the whole point, right? We want to be, I said the very first slide, right? You want to be able to bet the variant, right? Bet well on a positive variant. That's how you beat the casino. When these things are happening, the 36 6s, 35 6s out of 36 rolls, when that's happening, that's when you beat them. That's when you bet the positive variant for you. That's your chance, okay? Again, positive variant does not equal a trend. It's a whole different thing, okay? You can't predict it, but boy, oh boy, if you're on it and you can be on it by betting style, you can be just fine. That's what Jeff and Ed do. They call it trend betting, but it's really variance. They're exploiting a variant is what they're actually doing, right? When you roll a 5, and you heavy bet the 5 after rolling a 5 and it rolls again in a couple of rolls from now, you're heavy betting the variant, right? That's different than trend betting. There's no predictability. He's not predicting a 5's coming, right? He's tossing the dice in a way that he hopes will result in more 5s. There's a mechanism there, but it's not trending yet, I hope that makes sense. It's really hard to explain that in terms that I think are consumable. So, and again, let's revisit yesterday's inconvenient truths. Right? Variance is the only constant in a random game. You know you're going to have variance. Okay, streaks, clusters, they happen. Okay, they ensure variance actually. Okay, they are an implicit result that's going to come during a variant. You can't escape that. Embrace the variance. Now, the variance could be positive or negative. Right? Variance can come with causality, right? That would be a trend. In a random game, there's no causality to it. There's no causality to variance in a random game. When a variant happens, 6 sixes out of 36 or 35 sixes out of 36, right? You've got to bet on it, right? You can bet the variant, right? If the variant is negative for you, right? All those horn numbers, and I'm a box number player, right? You might back your bets down a little bit. The variant is negative for what you're looking for. If you're in a negative variant to you, you can bail on the betting. You can run from it. That's totally legit. Darksider likes to say, don't let a shooter beat me twice. Or I don't like that I'm seeing all these come out. Fine, don't bet, right? If that's the variant that you're living in, don't bet it. Don't call it a trend. Don't call it a trend. In this cluster of outcomes right now, the sevens are happening a lot. If that scares you, don't bet the variant. If you don't like the variant you're in, get out of it. But I'm here to tell you that it doesn't ultimately matter. The law of big numbers will bring everything back, right? A cluster of sevens now will always be followed at some point by a cluster where there's no sevens. That's just the way that it happens. That's the way averages work. You can bet the variant or bail on the variant, but you cannot predict what's coming next inside the variant. And that's, I think, where people get themselves wrapped around the axle. And that's where I want to protect you all. Right? Do not fool yourself into thinking that because you saw something, then something else is going to happen. You're not that smart. You're not that good. Nobody's that good. That's the message here. That is the takeaway message. Okay. Here's the full list of truths that I laid out for you yesterday. I'll repeat them for you, and then we'll talk about DI. Okay. Probabilities never change. Roll to roll, 5 out of 36 chance you roll a 6, right? 3 out of 36 chance you roll a 4. It does not change from roll to roll. Nothing in a random game can change that, okay? Causality does not exist unless you are a dice influencer with proof of that. Otherwise, for the rest of us, causality, not a thing. Nothing is due, right? Sevens go away for a while. They aren't due. They will come at some point, but betting something that's due is fallacy. Betting something that's not due, fallacy. You can make money in that way sometimes, for sure. DGE certainly does it. Mathematically speaking, it's nonsense. It's nonsense to say something is due. It's just going to happen when it happens. Clusters of what you're looking at there. You're trying to describe the patterns. Okay, nothing is impossible except the perfect 36, right? Remember this next point too. 1/6 of the rolls your bets are on for, you're going to lose all the bets, right? If you put your cross bet out there for one roll, take a hit, turn them off, wait for 1,000 rolls, turn your bets on again, take one hit or take one roll, turn your bets off again. If you just do that, one rolling off, and with 1,000 rolls in between, you're going to be alive for 6 rolls. You're losing those bets, one of those 6 rolls. That's just the way you cannot escape it. You can't. That's fallacy also. You cannot escape it. You can't escape the math. It will get you in the end. Okay. You are playing a long game. And I know I know that people don't believe this, but you're playing a long game. Okay. You're playing 100 rolls today, 100 rolls next Saturday. That was 200 consecutive rolls for you. Sorry. If you logged them all in a book and typed them on the win craps, it wouldn't give a shit that it was over 2 days. It would say, here's 200 rolls. That's the way that life works. You're in a long game. You can play your short sessions with a short game mindset, and I totally recommend that you do that. Get in and get out if you can. But remember, when you stack them together, it is a long game. The law of big numbers has affected all of you, whether you realize it or not. Whether you're an amazing shooter and you're creating variance on your own because of your shot today, and the next day you have one of those bad days, guess what? Those days put together back to back, you made a lot of money here, you lost some money here. Those rolls, when laid out linearly, are going to be random distribution. Sorry, that's just the facts of it. And everybody would agree with that. It's just the way that it works. And that's how law of big numbers works, right? Guys will tell you, the more rolls you put into a statistic, the closer you're going to get to perfection in the pyramid. Just the way that it works, because the good days and bad days will eventually even themselves out. So that's, I think, an important piece there. Now, let's talk about the fun piece, okay? And this is where it went off the rails yesterday, I think. And I think that a lot of folks didn't hear this last part. This is the part that I think is the most important, okay? Because everything I've said to this point, although I've touched on influence, is about randomness. In a random game, everything I've said so far is true. You can predict nothing. You can be in a variance and not be able to do a shitting thing about it, other than bet what's happening. You can bet what is happening. You cannot bet what you think is going to happen. All that's true, right? In a world of randomness. Now, for those of you who practice and are considered to be good shooters, Ed called himself yesterday extra lucky or something like that, right? Pardon me. Ed's a good shooter. George is a good shooter. Alfredo's a good shooter. I'm not a good shooter, right? Sometimes I have great days, right? Some days my chopper is amazing and I'm all over the repeaters. Some days I'm horseshit. Okay. This segment here goes to the people who will say things like, I will only ever bet on a good shooter, right? Or a good shooter says, I am practicing so that I can create variance. I can be the source of the variant. I can be the mechanism behind a trend, right? If that's you, this is for you, okay? I'll read this to you because I know the words are small. The purpose behind setting the dice and throwing in a consistent manner and reading and adjusting is to create a tendency for the dice to favor certain numbers, creating variance, okay? The mechanism that causes the trend and trends itself to predictable outcomes. That is the purpose of dice influence. This is the reason why Ed said he practices 2 hours a day that you don't see on camera. Alfredo, I don't know that Alfredo ever practices because he's on live 16 hours a day. I'm not sure what he's practicing, but I'm sure he's practicing sometime, right? I practice an hour or more a day that you don't see, right? We're all doing this to see if we can create a little bit of variance in here. Mudslide Mac is the person who coined the term, I create variance. I love that statement. If you're going to practice and you can create that 1, 2, 3, 4, 10%, whatever the variance is, if you can create that variance through your throw, now you're in this world. Now you can say, I am the mechanism behind this variant. I am the number that goes into the formula that calculates the variance. I am, in my particular case, when I spin my chopper and I've got a 3% variance, I know this, with the top and the bottom dice showing more than they ought to. I'm 3.5% above what you expect it to be. I've created variance in my toss with the top and the bottom faces of the stacked throw that I do. I know that, right? I can use that as a formula, part of the formula to plug in and say, now what do we expect to see? And what we can use to expect to see that is based on what is on top and on bottom. We can predict clusters, okay? Am I good enough? No. Am I consistent enough? No. Am I these other guys who do amazing throws? No. They have better data, more years at work at it. Their numbers are more reliable than mine are, but this is the point. If you're practicing DI, and if you actually can pull it off, and again, there's debate all around. Can you do it or not? I'm not going to open up that can of worms. I'm going to speak to you directly though. If you're doing this, you are attempting to create variance. You're attempting to be the machine behind the numbers. You are creating the number that goes into the formula. You are creating, hopefully, a trend that helps you predict an outcome. So when Ed says, am I in a trend? I can say 2 ways to that, yes and no, right? Yes and no. If your set is producing numbers that you expect it to produce, and you say, I am predictably in this pocket of outcomes, then I can say, yes, you're creating a trend today, right? If it's me hucking and chucking or me choppering on a decent day, no, I'm random. I could never say that I'm creating a variant in the moment or causing a trend to happen. I'm not that skilled, okay? If you are that skilled, this slide applies to you. And this is, I think, where some folks got really mad yesterday because they didn't hear me say this. This is the most important thing. If you are a controlled shooter, right, and you know what your bump is, what your advantage is, what your SRR and your SOR, which is actually the better number than SRR to me. SOR is the better one. Not SOR, BSR. BSR is the box numbers to sevens. If you're making variance in those numbers. I think Ed yesterday I think his BSR was 6 or 8. Was it 8.2? And it should have been 4.3. That's a huge number of box numbers versus the 7 in that small sample set that he had. That creates variance. That's a variance created. You could call that a trend if you're trending into that box, into that pocket, right? That's different than pure random. So this discussion has got to happen on 2 planes, the random plane and the DI plane. I'm telling you right now, there's a literal handful of people, and I think you guys who practice DI will agree with me here. There's a handful of people. I don't even think it's 1% of people that are practiced enough and skilled enough to pull it off. Okay, some of them are in our group. Some of them are in the Craps Nation group. Some of them are people that Ed has introduced us to in his shows. These guys that we never heard of, some of us, right? And again, you're talking about, of all the craps players, it's a tiny percentage of them, right? The rest of us live in random world. We live in the world of the first 5 slides. We live in randomness, and that's the facts, folks. That is just the facts. So, with all that said, I'm done. I'm off the soapbox. Hope that clears it up. Let's go. Let's go and read some questions real quick. I know I'm running a little bit late. That was a long ass show, but I felt like it was important to get through it. I'm gonna look at PCs here and see what's here. TCS, it's variance versus risk that you apply. Exactly, right? And you adjust down. Now, I do a lot of shows on streak betting. I think streaks are the thing, right? I look at roulette, right? 10 blacks in a row, all the time, right? First dozen comes out 6 times in a row. It happens all the time, right? Those are streaks. Those are patterns. They give you the board so that your brain can see the pattern visually, and it's a pattern. Let me go to here and bet the red, right? That's what we all do. That's like looking at the dice and going, ooh, a bunch of 6s just happened. Let me get on that trend. It's all bullshit. It's not real. Now, if you bet it, if you say, I'm gonna bet the thing that happened last in roulette, I'm gonna bet the black. And if it comes again, I'm gonna take 1 and press 1. And if it comes again, I'm gonna take 1 and press 1. And you're gonna do this little up and pull thing, and you catch a run, you might say to your friends, I caught a great black trend or a great red trend. And you didn't. You caught a streak. And you bet the streak correctly, and you capitalized on a variant. That's what happened. It wasn't that the blacks were trending. The blacks clustered, and you happened to be in the beginning of it and caught it and bet it properly. You exploited the variant, like I said on the first slide. That's very, very important to understand. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I know. And again, I called you guys out only because you both say the words. And I know you're being snarky. Oh, is that a trend? Like, trying to give me shit. It's all good. But it's not a trend unless you're causing it. Unless you are the mechanism behind the variant, it's not a trend. And I think that's the most important part of this definition that we can talk about. Unless you are the mechanism, it is not a trend, right? When I threw out here, there was no mechanism to those random throws. That was me just hucking them. We ended up with a weird variant on those 2s, on the 1, 2, 3s. There wasn't a trend. It felt like it. We applied a pattern to it visually, but it was not an actual trend. It was just a cluster of weird numbers, and there was no mechanism or history behind that led to those 5 3s coming. And that's what it is. And again, it's not about disagreeing. So you're saying this might be from earlier. You say when you're locked in, you can have trends that repeat. This is what I'm saying, though. I think you might have said this earlier before I clarified the point later, and I hope that's what happened here, right? You create a trend through the mechanism of throwing. That's what I'm trying to say there, right? You can't bet a trend. There's no such thing unless you're the one causing it, right? If you're causing the trend because of what you're doing, that's a mechanism. Then you can look at history and say, yes, I threw the dice this way. The top die did this and that. Therefore, if I do this again with a different set, I can predict that die is probably going to be one of these 2 numbers. That's what you're saying. That's the controlled shooter in you saying you can create it, right? And that's, again, a whole different conversation than random betting. And that's what it is. All right. 5 says the game is random or it is not. No such thing as a little bit random. I'm not saying a little bit random. You can't be a little bit pregnant either. I know that. Right. And again, there are people, you being one of them, myopia being one of them, that says DI is complete BS and it's all random. I don't want to have that conversation today. Okay. The conversation we're having right now is, again, starting from everything being random, what I said is the truth. If you have a proved ability to move the needle, then you can say I am a little bit super random or like anti-random or have created a trend. If you have proven it over time and consistently, we can have that secondary conversation. I cannot have that conversation. I'm not there. I'm random. I'm trying, but I'm random, and that's it. A pyramid is due to become more perfect. Nah, not necessarily. It's not that it's due. It's that the more numbers you get, the smaller the variance becomes, right? A 1% variant in 100 throws is one full number that's changing, right? It's like, okay, out of 100 throws, one of them, 1% is one number. That's different. It's a big, if you look at the pyramid, that's a sizable jump. In 10,000 rolls, 1% is so small in the grand scheme of things that it's untraceable. Over 1 million rolls, that 1% is untraceable because there's so many rolls around it. So the pyramid looks more perfect. It won't become perfect, but that 1% becomes less significant over time with the bigger numbers. And because of the bigger numbers, you're more likely to have great rolls and a bunch of junk, and that junk will squeeze it in a little bit tighter. So 1% becomes 0.5% over 10,000 rolls. That's what happens. I don't say that it's due, but I think that it's the nature of math. And that's why mathematicians and statisticians love huge sample sets, not tiny sample sets. And there's a reason for that, because it gets you closer to the reality of the thing. So I hope that is, let's see, PC thinking in my chat question, Waylon. Quick question, if you're teaching dice control and you toss dice off the table every 5 or 6 rolls, wouldn't it get? That's funny. That is funny. Probably. That's probably a landing zone issue, I think. Texas Crash, who created my rant today? I didn't, there's no creating a rant. The rant, we're gonna be late for the next show. I wanna answer the question. Yesterday, I did the same lecture, but I didn't do it as good of a job as I did. Today was great. Didn't do a good job as yesterday. So I think some people misunderstood what I was trying to say, especially on the DI side of things. And it led to a couple of videos being put out and a lot of negative comments, a ton of emails that I got calling me all the names that you want to be called. Whatever, thumbs downs on the videos, all those things. And that was born of me having a conversation with somebody during the other show of something is due, stop betting it, or whatever it was. And I'm like, you guys are full of shit. Like I threw 2 sevens, doesn't mean a third seven's coming. And they're like, you can't. And I said, there's no such thing as these trends. I know you guys, and I said to myself in that moment, I'm gonna go ahead and do a show on this. And that was yesterday. And it was a 10-minute little rant that didn't sit well. I don't think I explained it very good at all. So today I went and redid it because I want to explain it better. It became an hour show today instead of a 10-minute thing like I wanted, but that's what it is, okay? That's what it is. And I think, yeah, it's good debate. And like I said yesterday, I want you to think. Think about the words variant, variance, trends, predictability. Okay, think about those words, clusters and streaks, all those definitions that we threw out there. Think about them and how they apply to your game. And use the right words when you're talking about stuff. Use the right words, right? You're in a variant as a random player. Something that's happening is not trending. It's just what the variant is. There's nothing you can look at from what just happened to predict what's about to happen. There's just nothing you can do about that. No matter how many Ouija boards you pull out, and no matter how smart you think you are and how great your trending chart is, there's zero chance you can predict what's going to happen. Zero. And that's a harsh reality, but it's the truth. It's the truth in a random game. That's just the truth. All right. There it is. Yeah, right. If I don't get hate mail, I'm not doing my job. Jacob from Waging Me This yesterday said, by the way, great show. He said, great show. And he said, everybody's going to hate you, but the one person that listened is going to save money because of it. And if that's what it's about, that's what it's about. So there it is. El Toro says, got a bit lost in the rant. Is the variant you referring to the person betting or the person shooting the dice? The variant with a T is the period of time that you're in, right? You are in a variant. As you're shooting the dice, the results around you are a variant from expectations. So as soon as I rolled the 4th 4 in this example, we were in a variant because we knew we were going to be off of the expected pyramid, right? The variant is a physical thing. Variance is the calculation of how far off of expectations you are. 1%, 2%, whatever the percentage is. As a shooter, as a controlled shooter, if you're logging your stats and you're doing your work, your homework, you can know how much variance you can create, how big the variant will be, and maybe predict what you're shooting for. That's the controlled shooter's mentality is that. That's the DI piece of it. Yesterday, what happened, El Toro, was that when I tried to explain that, I don't think I explained it very well. I think the sentence I just gave you was the perfect way to say it. Yesterday, I didn't do a good job, and it caused a bunch of mess because I wasn't very clear in my words. Today, I think I was much more clear. And I think it's important to know those three things are interrelated, but they're not always a Venn diagram. You don't always have trends. Only if there's trends require a mechanism. And if you're not a controlled shooter, there's no mechanism. And if you're not a proven controlled shooter, there's no mechanism. If you're not able to adjust what you're seeing in the moment and make a positive change to what you're doing, there's no mechanism. That's important to understand, okay? That's why I say there's very, very few people that are good at this. You know who I'm talking, when I say that, you know who I'm talking about. There are a few people that I know and trust that are good at this stuff, and I trust their word when they say it. People like me, right? When I talk about dice throwing, take it with a grain of salt because I'm not very good, right? I'm still learning all of that. So there it is. I'm done. It's 9:05, 9:07. Oh my God. We got to go. My final thoughts are this. Thank you. Always my final thoughts. Always thank you. Thank you for letting me rant today, right? We had 56 people to start the show. We've got 63 now, which means I didn't turn anybody away, which is pretty cool. And I really, again, I don't mean to be math classy. I don't mean to sound like a whiny bitch all day because I didn't like what happened yesterday. I just felt like I did a bad job of explaining it. And today I want to do a better job explaining it. I hope that I hope I did a better job today of making it all clear. And again, frame it all in the context of the random game that we live in. Take everything I just said and move it to the roulette table, please. Take everything I just said and put it on the baccarat table, please. That variance trend, it all applies to all the games. Banker and roulette never trends. It just happens. It just happens, right? It's a variant. When 5 bankers in a row come, or if the shoe has got 37 bankers and 31 players, the variant was 5 in that shoe. That was the variant. Now, hopefully, those 5 extras came in a little bit of a cluster, and you bet on it and did good. That's what you hope for. That's how you beat them, right? This applies to every game. Dice is different because of the influence piece of it that folks are talking about. That's the change of it. Everything else, hope that makes sense. You guys rock. You guys rock for giving me the whole time. I need a few minutes. It's 9:08. I haven't taken one sip of my coffee today. El Toro, by the way, thinks his wife and him watch my show, and they say, you never drink your coffee. You call it coffee and crafts, and you sit there and you never drink. Well, here I go. In my Linfield mom cup today. But I get going sometimes, and I forget to drink. You know what I mean? I forget to drink. You guys are awesome. I love you all. Jeff and Ed, I love you guys probably the most. You guys are great. When you're saying like, is that a trend? I know you were being snarky and fun. It's cool. It's all in good fun. But my answer is no. Unless you meant to throw that 5, it's not a trend. Unless you meant to throw the 5 a second time, it ain't a trend. If you got lucky, it's just a way to explain the variant. It's a way that our brains function. We need to find patterns. That's just the way that it is. So there it is. All right, guys, I'm out. Thank you, Toro, for calling that out. We get myopic in dice, but every game has the same. It's all the same. All right. I got to go make coffee. I'll see you out there. We'll do our 6, 7, 8 paycheck in about 10 minutes. I need to just relax the throw a little bit, and I'll be out there and throw. Bye. Love you. God bless.